desktop, share, all right. And it looks like it's picking up sound okay, so I think we'll be all right. Okay, so here we are at 152, and the point of this is instant response. This is the second Mandia training course. The first one is 126, which is also happening this semester, practical malware analysis, where you analyze Windows software and that is a small part of incident response, analyzing how malware works to figure out what damage it has done and how to remove it. The larger job of which that is part is incident response, which is what you do after you find out you've been hacked. Until about 5 or 6 years ago, many people believed that you could put on firewalls and such and block the attacks, and that you would then not have anything to worry about. But we've all learned that that is hopeless. The nation-state attackers are too powerful, the advanced resistant threats, so no matter what you do, they will get in. And so you have to detect when they've gotten in and then respond to it and kick them out. And that's the process of incident response. And one small part of that is malware analysis. There are a lot of other parts. So there's the book, and there's an online section where you can take quizzes, and that's where your scores will be recorded. And your homework comes in by email, just like my other classes. And the projects are all numbered strangely because I'm redesigning them to use them for other purposes as well. But anyway, the first several projects are ready. And I have a ridiculous amount of extra credit projects already ready, which we'll talk about later. I've got both of the first 2 Boss of the Socks ready for Splunk. So you can make enough points to get an entire A in the course for doing nothing but learning Splunk, and that would not be a bad thing to do. Splunk is not the only tool used in instant response, but it's a really, really important one. And if all you do is learn Splunk, you won't be sorry. But we will cover other material as well. But Splunk is the leader in the SIEM solution. It's the 4th highest paying company in America. It's used by 95 of the Fortune 100. It's really big. So I've made a lot of Splunk in this class. And we will cover some other things too, but that is going to be a big part of this class. All right, and I have the usual grading stuff down here, as always. Same as everything, there's some quizzes, some projects, there's a final exam, there's a bunch of points, and then 90%'s an A and 80%'s a B, and so on. The projects aren't all written yet. I'm modifying them from projects I used in the past, so the total number of points might vary a little, but whatever it is, it's 90% for an A and 80% for a B, and you get extra credit by going to off-campus training events and such, like RSA and V-sides and all that. So, all right, and if necessary, I can kick people out, but usually that isn't necessary. Are there any questions about anything? If you need an ad code, I'll bring them up later. Did anybody come to get an ad code? All right, I don't need to worry about that. I've got them if anybody wants them. There's room for everybody. Oh, you don't need to attend physically. That's important. You don't get points for showing up, and you don't lose points for not showing up. You can just ignore the meetings entirely and read the book if you want to, or you can connect by Zoom. That's what people are doing now. The Zoom link is on the class web page here. So you can connect from anywhere with an iPhone or a computer of any type and attend the lectures live. And also they will be put on YouTube and archived here so you can view them later if you want. And the only thing, it doesn't affect your grade whether you do the lecture or not. All that matters is whether you do the projects and the quizzes. I would recommend it, but I certainly don't measure whether you buy the book. Most students do better if they read the book and listen to the lecture. And I do have quizzes before the lecture on the topic, assuming you have read the book. So most people either buy the book or get a PDF copy or something. It's worth it. It's a very good book. But I don't have any way to know whether you do. And I know there are some students who don't. I recommend it though. Most students are better off reading the book. You can do that if you want to. You can read my slides. They summarize what's in the book. The book has much more detail. Yeah, that's true. And there's, of course, online resources and blogs and everything that cover everything. None of this information is new or secret, really. It's now all several years old. All right, so let's take a look at the first chapter here, and then I'll show you some of these projects. So this is a summary of the reason why this entire field was created. This field was created because of an advanced resistant threat attacks from nation states, starting with China. China was just the first nation that got caught doing it. Many other nations have been doing it all along, and now the major aggressors are China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran against the US, but the #1 aggressor is the US, hacking other people. But since we're in the US and mostly talking about US companies, they don't worry about getting hacked by the US as much as by getting hacked by other people. So anyway, the reason this incident response strategy was developed was to protect companies from advanced attackers. And so an event is anything that you make a note of on a network, but an incident is a security incident, and that is when there's a breach of policy. Something happens that affects your security, like a person enters an area they're not authorized to be, or you find malware on a machine, or some of your data is leaking out, something like that. There's a significant enough violation of security policy that it sets in motion incident response. And this is a relatively high level of management required to declare an incident. It's sort of like the governor of a state declaring an emergency. This means you're actually going to mobilize a team and expend a lot of resources dealing with the incident. So the first question is whatever happened serious enough to be treated as an incident, or is it just a minor thing that we can handle with ordinary tech support? So when you declare incident response, then first you decide whether you've got an incident. If you do, your first job is containment. Figure out how big the fire is. So somebody has a laptop and the antivirus goes off. Well, if it's just one laptop, that's a minor incident. But then the question is something else already infected? Did that virus come from something else on your network? How much of the company is currently under hostile control or under attack? So you first determine the scope. How big is the problem? You try to avoid having random people do random stupid things trying to fix it, but instead be organized. And you're trying to prevent disruption to the business and really respond to the real incident. So your goal in incident response is to effectively contain the incident and restore the business back to normal function after really removing the other people. Now, you may want to actually gather data and determine who attacked you and perhaps go after them in lawsuits. Now, this is, or attack them with other means. This is what the military does and the government. Corporations typically don't know and don't care. It doesn't really matter who attacked you. You probably aren't going to waste time trying to kick legal lawsuits against them or punish them in other ways. You just want to get rid of them. But basically, I think what happens is when you are a big corporation and you're closely tied to the government and the military, then you work with them and they do figure out who hacked you. So when Sony got hacked, the US military did help determine who attacked them and make a big deal of finding it out, that it was in fact North Korea. And I think that was important for global politics, but I don't really think it helped Sony any. I think the only thing Sony got out of helping that happen was the good grace of the US government, which is not a small thing, but I don't think the Sony is going to benefit in any way from punching North Korea back. But they are willing to play ball with the US government. The US government says, we want to analyze your network and find out who attacked you for other reasons. Anyway, and so that's the game here. And of course, you typically have to educate your management. Your management is, you have to figure out what happened and you have to convey it effectively to higher management. So your IR has several teams. The investigation team is like the detectives in a murder case. These are the people that are analyzing evidence and figuring out what happened. Your remediation team are the people who try to fix the problem by ejecting the attacker and restoring back to normal operations. And then you have public relations, both external and internal. You have communications teams. The external public relations is a huge part. You now have to explain to everybody, your customers, your business partners, your investors, you have to explain to everybody what happened and what you did about it. And that's real important to do that right. It's very rarely done right. Most companies lie. They claim they haven't been hacked. Then they lie and say it's not a problem. Then they lie and say it's over when it's not over. And they just make themselves look ridiculous. The best companies like Cloudflare's had several security incidents. And every time they are, I think, a model of good behavior, they completely analyze it and they have a detailed blog post that explains exactly what happened, how they detected it, how they fixed it, how they're going to prevent it next time. That's what you want. There's no point pretending to be perfect and pretending you never have a problem. The best thing is to explain to everybody clearly what they did. Then you can trust you. Nobody's perfect, but at least you can trust them that they are trying hard when they make a good case. LinkedIn is a fine example of the worst. LinkedIn got hacked and they just lied about it. They got all their password hashes stolen, and the criminal that stole them put them on a Russian forum, put a small subset of them on a Russian forum that he couldn't crack. And so people, including me, went to that dumped list and found our password in there. And then LinkedIn continued for a week trying to say they hadn't had the password stolen. Then they said they only had 60,000 of them stolen. And it was the guy even said he stole them all, and these are only the ones that were hard to crack. And then they tried to say they were going to do nothing about it, and they weren't even going to eject the bad guy and let him have control of their network because it didn't matter. And they just progressed through every possible attempt to just pretend there's nothing wrong. It's like telling everyone everything's fine when they can see the building on fire behind you. It's a losing game, but it's what a lot of people do. All right. Now, the old-fashioned forensics that was intended for police investigations was intended to get evidence to go to court. So the fundamental rule, the basic principle back in the days like Windows 95, Windows 98, is you kick out the power plug, turn off the machine, take the hard drive out, make an image of it, and that's your data. The reason they did this is because anything in RAM is useless, because the contents of RAM don't have an owner or a timestamp, so they don't prove anything about who did what. So RAM is useless. The only thing that matters is files on the disk that have a timestamp and an owner, and then you can say the person did this and that thing. But that is true for criminal cases in the old days, but these days, and especially for incident response, the most important evidence is in RAM, because you want to see malware running, network connections in progress, and so on, and you really don't care if you can't determine which user account launched it or anything, because our main concern is not to find an individual and throw them in jail. Our main concern is understand what damage is being done to the network and the other machines and stop it and fix it. And so it's very different. And so you normally do live response. Live response is a much sloppier, and it used to be a controversial forensic technique. The reason why you start by kicking the plug is the power goes off and the hard disk stops changing. Now you make an image of it with a write blocker, so it doesn't change. Now you can make a perfect image of that disk, and you make copies of it, and everybody has exactly the same data, the prosecution and the defense. They like that. That's beautiful and mathematically clean. A live response is intrinsically sloppy. You run software on the system that is infected, and you gather some evidence from it by running your software. And clearly, the software you add to analyze RAM modifies the situation. So this is more like investigating a blood spatter on the wall. You wipe up some of the blood and analyze it. Well, you changed the evidence in order to inspect it. You can't do it again. The first time you did it, you changed it. Most forensics is done that way, and you just accept that. So it's not as beautiful and perfect as the old dead forensics on a static hard drive, but it is the way to get the answer, and you have to understand what you're doing to the system and what you find there, what part of what you see is what you put in, what part is what was already there. So that's the game. So here's some of the major cases that led to this modern system, and they are very thinly veiled real cases. In my opinion, the first one here is Target. Incredibly obvious to me. Anyway, so this is what typically happens. Yeah, you may have heard that the typical time for a company to realize they've been hacked is 9 months. It's probably more fair to say the most popular common time for a company to realize they've been hacked is never. Most of them are currently owned and they never know it because you don't have any way to detect it. But the ones that do find out typically find out after 9 months, and that's what it was here, because most companies have no significant ability to detect intrusions. So in January, they found a SQL injection vulnerability website, which is very common. 11% of websites have this problem. So if you're a large company with a lot of servers and a lot of developers, it's extremely likely that some people are going to make this mistake unless you really have strong measures in place to detect and prevent it. So they found the ability to compromise one server. However, they didn't get to a server that was terribly important, which is, of course, very common. So they were able to get command execution on this server using the old XP command shell, which back in the days of Windows XP and such would directly get you a shell right on a SQL server without having to do any subtle tricks. So now they can run malware on the database server DB1. But the database server DB1, this is a reasonably competently designed network. The right way to design a network is anything public-facing like web servers and the database servers they use are in a special area called the demilitarized zone, which is protected by a firewall from your internal server that has the really important stuff like credit card numbers and such. So you expect this to get compromised more likely than that, and you have layers of defense. And that's what happened here. So they were in here. Now there was a link to an internal database server, and they were able to send some commands to that internal database server. Now the attacker spent weeks performing reconnaissance. From the outside of a network, if you send ping and other nmap stuff to see what's happening, you'll only see the public-facing servers. All the internal servers should be hidden from direct outside connection. So when you get your first foothold in the network, you then scan the network from there and you try to find something else you can compromise and perform lateral movement, wandering around, trying to see what's in there. And this took them weeks. They managed to implant a backdoor, and they managed to get a local administrator account on the first database server that let them get to an internal system. And until very recently, there's a fundamental flaw with almost all networks, which is that they use image-based deployment, like Microsoft Deployment Server or Garden Ghost. And so there is one image, and all the servers are complete clones of that one image. So they all have exactly the same local administrator password. There is a modern solution to this called swarming, which where you modify the image for every deployment to prevent this, but that's only become popular in the last year or two. Before this was the case everywhere. Every machine in your whole company will always have exactly the same local administrator password. So once you find one, you can use it elsewhere. So now they can exploit the domain controller, put on keyloggers, get password hashes, and get more and more information about real accounts. So by mid-February, they had 20 backdoors installed all over the place. And this is the point. When you have something go off like an antivirus alert, that probably doesn't mean you found the virus. It means there's probably all kinds of malware all over the place. And this is the first one you noticed. Anyway, so now they made a custom kit. They went into things and they started sneaking past the antivirus, had a backdoor turned on, were able to move remote desktop traffic in. They set up a command and control channel, and they had resistance. So now they've got control of some of the machines, and they're able to tunnel some traffic out through DNS queries, which we do in the other classes. We have some simulated DNS bots. You can watch encrypt DNS traffic. You can hide data inside DNS traffic quite easily. And by late March, they've stolen quite a lot of data with names and passwords, and they've now been able to map the internal network to find out where the financial data is. They have not yet been able to steal the credit card numbers, but they have begun to find out where they are. So in order to steal the financial data, they want to have an outbound FTP connection to shuttle the data out, and they're going to compress the data as little files and send it out. And that's why they needed to get to a jump server. So the internal environment they were in, they were able to compromise the system, but the financial network was again isolated. Your network should be in segments, and the real goodies are over here. Those are the payment terminals processing credit card transactions, and they haven't managed to get inside there yet. So the point of what you want is PCI data. PCI data is the data that's on a stripe of a magnetic credit card, and you want the whole stripe, and then you can perform transactions with that as if you had the card. So they compromised the jump server. They were able to take RAM from the jump server and find password hashes in RAM, which they were then able to crack. And they spent the next 2 months finding the systems that had the cardholder data. And then they were able to just determine their naming convention, which was nice, simple naming convention with the numbers, of course, because these are payment terminals at stores. And they have a systematic name. And so they were finally able to make a path out. You can't have an internal machine of high value connect directly to the internet. That is not allowed in any proper network. They have traffic control at the routers, firewalls, and switches. So now that they're able to go on these machines and have financial data, they can't send it home directly. They have to go to the jump server, then to the email server, then to the command and control server, bouncing hop to hop because they can't make any direct connections straight out to the internet from these internal, highly secure systems. So they're slowly, over a period of months, building covert channels through the network with traffic that is not detected because it's masked to look like normal traffic. It looks like normal web traffic or DNS traffic or something and is not setting off alarms. So when they're done, they then put PS Suite on these, which is a Microsoft tool from sysinternals that lets you run processes on a machine. And now they can dump RAM from the machines, and they wrote scripts that would run RAM, dump RAM from just the one process they want. I had the first project used to be in this class where you dump RAM from a system, and then you analyze that with a couple of tools to find passwords and credit card numbers in the RAM. But that project, I'm trying to move this entire class to the cloud, like my other classes, and the student that was trying to rewrite the project to go to the cloud said, I can't dump the RAM on these cloud machines. The RAM is too big, and there's no way to move that large file around. So I realized this is actually a good problem to have. This is exactly the same problem the target hackers had. You don't want a copy of the entire RAM. That's like 4 gigabytes. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants that. They didn't gather the whole RAM. They didn't even get all the RAM from one process. They wrote malware that would dump the RAM from one process, then get just the credit card numbers and just send that back. Don't bother me with all the garbage. And that is the modern way of incident response. You don't make a complete image of RAM, a complete image of a hard drive. What you do is you write a tool that will surgically extract what you need and send you a small amount of data. There's no point gathering gigabytes of data. Nobody wants to crawl through all that. That is how you do criminal investigations, where you take a laptop, you spend weeks analyzing it, then you go to court and have months of a battle proving that they did the bad thing. But we want to move faster than that in instant response. So we want to use a surgical procedure that will extract just the valuable data. And that's what these guys did. So they wrote this thing called card harvest, a binary which would steal the credit card numbers out of the process that had them and have only them, and then hash the data So you have a record of which ones have been collected, so you don't even bother to send multiple copies. If there's multiple copies of the same credit card number, then they encrypt it so nobody can detect what they're stealing, because if you're sending obvious credit card numbers over the network, there's data loss prevention systems that will notice that. And now you save it to a file and then you sneak that out. So after they had spent months developing this channel that was leaking the data out, they then stole from all 90 financial systems all the credit cards, and this was one of the biggest hacks in the world at that time. This was, I think, the Target hack, one of the, about 4 or 5 years ago, the biggest hack, stole many millions of credit card numbers. And the technique was very interesting. This is the modern way people do it. So this is what you should be thinking about as a defender. Not that somebody is trying to infect something with malware and crash a system. They're building an underground evil network through your network to live there for a long period of time and carefully, quietly steal your goodies in a way that you won't notice. That's what they do. And you have to be ready to detect that and fix it. So after 10 months, somebody finally noticed some part of this channel. He noticed that one of the mail server was sending weird packets that weren't proper mail. This is also how Google caught China in the original attack of 2010. China was sending all this data back to China to a server they shouldn't have been sending it to, and someone noticed, why is our stuff going to this weird server in China that is not part of our company? So eventually somebody noticed some of this bad traffic, and then they realized there was a compromise, initiated instant response, and they hired a team, almost certainly Mandiant, and Mandiant sent a whole team of people out there, and it took them 2 months to analyze it and figure it out and throw them off. And they were considered, so, you know, we're now in basically a year of compromise. This is what you expect. And the rating of an instant response team is how quickly you detect and fix a problem. And this one was an early one, and you can see it was a year of theft before they stopped them, essentially. It is a huge accomplishment even to do that. And the most professional teams can, of course, get it much faster. But it's a big step to be able to do this at all. Most companies are just helpless. They have no detectors that can detect this. They have nobody on staff that has any clue how to fix it, and they don't have enough money to hire a third party to fix it. So they pretty much just get hacked and let it go on. Anyway, so the investigation team found indicators of compromise, which are ways to detect the machines that are being used by the bad guys. So first you have to enumerate their tools, tactics, and procedures, called TTP. You know the malware they use, the servers they like to use, strings that are likely to be in their stuff, so you can identify the signs of infection and then run tools that detect the signs of infection on your network. And then you find they've infected all these different systems, analyze the network traffic, and find out everywhere they've gone and everything they did, and map it all out, and then you make a containment plan. And by the way, while you're investigating, you are very careful not to let the bad guys know that you're onto them. Because if they know that you're starting to realize something is wrong and you start fixing a few systems, they will be warned and they will dig in deeper, install new backdoors and such. So you try to do it without them ever knowing you're touching them until you've figured it all out. And then in one single containment event, you close all of their backdoors and all the vulnerabilities they used, so they lose all of their footholds and they can't get back in. That is the goal. As you can imagine, it often fails. You often do that, and then you monitor for a week afterwards or 2 weeks and you realize they're still in here. We missed one. They're coming back in, and you have to do it again, just like, you know, anything else. But anyway, that's the game here. They did a sweeping eradication event within a 2-day period. And they were able to fix it, of course. But, you know, that's a pretty heroic activity. And that's what we're learning, how this works. And you're learning some of the skills you'll need to work on these IR teams. So here's another one. This was a much less skilled attacker. So here is someone that sent 100 spear phishing emails. Spear phishing, of course, is just a message to trick people into clicking on a link or running a file. They chose people who were known industry speakers that had gone to a conference. They somehow got the list of people that were involved in a talk at a conference or something. So they had a bunch of technical people that had administrator privileges, and they sent them a malicious PDF. So somebody eventually opened the malicious PDF, and now they got a Trojan installed in their machine. So now the attacker has control of one person's workstation. So then they performed reconnaissance. They found a VPN certificate on his laptop that he could use to VPN into the company. So they steal that certificate, they crack the local password, and now they can connect to the network as Bob. They don't need to control Bob's machine anymore. They can now connect to any machine Bob's authorized to get to. So then less than a week later, they come in again, use RDP, and this time they made a mistake. Instead of ending the session properly, they just closed the window, which left a hanging session, and that created an event in the security log, which was eventually found. So they actually got the attacker's IP address in Texas. Then they spent 2 weeks doing recon, found installed keyloggers, compromised the Outlook web access server so they could read email, which, by the way, is very common. So when you are performing an incident response, you do not send any emails on the company server talking about it. You have another channel like call everybody on their cell phone, because the attacker is very frequently reading all the company mails. That's what happened to the FBI when they were trying to catch Kevin Mitnick, the #1 most wanted hacker in the 90s. He totally owned the phone network. So he would listen into the FBI's phone conversations of how to catch him, and he would play jokes on them and leave notes, I was here and I left, and just take monkeys out of them and reroute their calls. So when they tried to call each other, they were calling porn lines and pizza places and stuff. And just he humiliated them madly, which is why they got so mad they gave him solitary confinement when they finally caught him. But your attackers can do the same thing. Any kind of data sent over the company network is probably handing it right into the attacker's hands. Anyway, so they started getting business critical data, and they were able to get some data and upload some of it to FTP servers. And then you can tell they're amateurs because they tried to hide their tracks by running defrag. This is a fairly common myth that defragmentation cleans the disk. It doesn't. You need to do a low-level format, a clean all in fdisk to really clean a disk. But if you think defrag cleans a disk, that's just a clue that you're an amateur, and this guy's obviously an amateur. So after 2 weeks after they started stealing data, the company put in an SIEM system like Splunk. And the cool thing about an SIEM system is it gathers all your logs in one place and gives you an efficient way to search through the logs. So you can now ask a question like, what's the unusual traffic on my network? How many people have logged in? Has the data been going the wrong direction somewhere in my network? These questions are fairly easy to ask, and therefore they were pretty easily able to see evidence of compromise. For example, Bob, his account has been used to log in from a bunch of different locations, and even multiple locations on the same day that are physically different. So that's the kind of thing you can easily see with an SIEM system that you wouldn't see if you just have logs scattered on many systems. And so they now know what's going on. Obviously, somebody has compromised Bob's credentials, and they're using them other than Bob. And so now they can just watch and see what's been done with Bob's credentials and begin to track it down. And so they disabled his account, and they found another account that was also being used maliciously. Now they know they've got a serious incident where it's not just one theft. The bad guy has been around long enough to steal other things. And you realize now we got a problem, and we actually need specialists to figure this out. This is not something our routine network administrators can figure out. So obviously they called Mandia, or they wouldn't be in the book. And so they came in here, tracked down the IP addresses, and they found network indicators of compromise, beacons that were sent from the malware. This is a wonderful thing. If they use one command and control server, then it's very easy to find all the infected system because they're all beaconing home to the central server. So they were able to track them down and perform an eradication event. 2 days after that, they found one of the IP address trying to get back into the email server, and this is because they made a mistake in their eradication event. They told everyone to change their passwords, but they did not force everyone to change their passwords, so some people did not. And the bad guy still had some of the old passwords, and some of the old passwords still worked, so they had to have a second eradication event forcing everybody to change their password to kick them out, and that was the end of that. And again, it's a relatively complicated network like the others. The bad guy had to crawl through various zones of networking and set covert channels to sneak the data out. That is a fairly common activity. And that's why if you're in the competition team or the OSCP certification, you spend a lot of time learning how to pivot, because you don't just take over one server now. You have to take over server and take over the next server and take over the next server and establish a tunnel of communication sneaking back through it all. That's how you have to do it in a modern system. That's why there are a few systems, like one of the major certificate authorities about 9 years ago was hacked, and it turned out they had a flat network with everybody just on the same LAN, and everybody mocked and complained about it. They said, that's ridiculous. That's not a proper network design. It's not okay for anybody to have a network that poorly designed anymore. You have to have it segmented like this for exactly this reason, because people are going to hack some of the systems, and you need to have another layer of security limiting how far they can get. That is just normal, good hygiene. So there's the attack lifecycle that came from one of the military contractors. This is, you get initial compromise, you establish a foothold with malware, then you escalate privileges. So you go from a local account to administrator, you go from an administrator to domain administrator, you steal all the credentials you can, pass the hash and so on. Then you have internal recon. You now search through the network from your new vantage point because there's parts of the network you can't see from other parts. So you have to find it all, and then you complete your mission, whatever your mission is. And if you are just trying to do a smash and grab, or you're trying to steal some credit card numbers and sell them and leave, that's a simple mission, but that's not usually what people are doing anymore. And they don't really need a full incident response team for that kind of mission much. Most people want to do now is what the nation states do. They want to establish a permanent presence on your network and continue stealing your stuff as long as they can, and hide as long as they can, just like having a spy inside your company. That's the modern goal. And so they aren't going to leave until you figure this out and really kick them out. So I got a few cahoots about that stuff. And then we'll take a break, and then I'll show you some of the projects. So that's this one. And they're trying to get money. And there it is. And it's randomized correctly, so things appear to be all right. So go to kahoot.it and put in that number. I'll prepare a place to record the winners. Let's see, I only got one person online and just maybe 5 or 6 in the room. So
Is this for his class?
what's the blood? Yeah, what about it? For the class. Yeah, if you can do this and you can get extra credit by doing this quiz, if I understand your question. Yeah, that's all.
No, this is my classmate, right?
Oh, your classmate is online. That could be. Let's see who it is. It is Hino. I don't know if that could be a fake name, but that's who's. Yeah, anyway, there will be a YouTube video people can watch later. Usually at the beginning of the semester, more people show up, but anyway, they didn't cancel the class. So we'll carry on with this. If any more people join the Kahoot, there's like maybe one there. Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll carry on with this. All right. So, any observable occurrence, what's that? Okay, that's an event. Right. What's a violation of policy? That's an incident. And of course, it has to be a relatively serious one to mobilize this, but that's the difference between an event and an incident. All right. So which team performs damage assessment? All right, that's your investigation, of course. They have to figure out what has happened and how much harm has been done, and what team removes the attacker. Okay, that's your remediation, of course. All right, so the winners are K. I can sort of guess who that might be.
You'd be wrong.
Oh, you must be, you're the face? Are you the face?
I'm the face, yes.
Okay, then I would be wrong, right? M. Hino, that looks like real name, I'm imagining. And Kay will have to tell me, Carl, are you? Okay, good. So I hope I have names close enough that my poor long-suffering grader can figure out who to give the points to. But those look like close to real names. So you get 3 points for being the most, and all right. So let's take a break until like 5 after 7. And then I will just demonstrate some of the projects, which are mostly going to be Splunk. But you will want to see the demonstration if you want to do those projects. So I'm going to pause the recording, although the share will continue. All right, so for the projects, there are two series of projects now, and I will probably continue in this vein. There are the general projects here, which are officially required, and they have a required part and an extra credit part, but points are all points. So if you choose to skip this project for 15 points and do 15 more points on this one, that's fine. All that matters is your total number of points. But anyway, you should do everything in the cloud. In previous semesters, we used local virtual machines. This semester, I'm moving everything I can to the cloud. So if you have a credit card, you can have free Google Cloud servers. They will not charge your credit card, but you do have to put in the number to get the servers. And so we'll start with Linux servers, and later on we'll be using Windows servers in the cloud. So after you've got them, then I have a series of projects that some students did last semester in the Purple Team competitions. You set up a server in the cloud. So you make an Ubuntu server, and then you install software on it. Here you install Splunk on it so you can monitor data coming, log files. And then you install, okay, then you start monitoring the logs of your local system with Splunk. And then you turn on password authentication. And now from your other system, you make some failed password attempts to log in. And then you check that you can see that in Splunk. Your Splunk server should be picking up the data, and you will find log events saying authentication failure. For user Fred, that's what you should see, just like that story about the company. The whole point of Splunk is you can search all the logs and you can find suspicious things like people failing to log in and people trying to log in from 2 different IP addresses at the same time and traffic going backwards and all those suspicious things. Then you can put on Suricata, which is an open source intrusion detection system that has a list of signatures and notices certain kinds of attacks. And once you've got your Suricata running, you can test it with a test rule, and then you can send a SYN flood and you'll detect that in the Suricata logs. And then you can update the Suricata rules to the recommended rules, which is an open source repository, I think called Emerging Threats for Snort, and Suricata has a similar name. These are the rules that people have contributed for current attacks. And once you've got them going, then you can send an attack here with another SYN flood attack in this one, and you'll detect it. So now you have a system that detects certain attacks. That's the first one. And there are various flags like this. When you have when it says a flag with a number here, and it tells you the data in the green box is the flag, you need to catch a screen image of that. A full desktop screen image with the clock in the corner so we can tell that people are copying other people's works. And once you get a flag, you just email it to this address, cnet.127sam@gmail. That's how you turn in your homework. So you should set up these servers, capture those images, email them in, and there's a deadline. You should start doing the projects next week, but I'm not going to take any points off until after the ad period, so you don't really have to do anything until September 19. And if you're after that, it's still worth doing, but you'll lose some points for being late. But if you want to be not falling behind, you should read the first couple of chapters and take the first couple of quizzes by next week and start doing the projects. Anyway, and there'll be a lot more projects as I add them, but that's the normal kind of project. The other kind, some people have already done the first one of these in previous classes, is Boss of the SOC. This is where you really learn how to use Splunk. And I have 2 of them now. There's another one that just became public very recently, and just yesterday I finally got it up and running. So this one is where you have a Splunk server that I have set up in the cloud that you can log into, and you can practice getting data off the Splunk server. So let me just demonstrate the first bit of this for people that haven't seen it. Yeah.
Do we need a Splunk tab or?
You do for the other project, but not for this one. This one you don't need to make any servers or anything. You're just using my server. So in fact, you could start with this one if you don't feel like setting anything up. And this is all extra credit. And there's so many points here, you could do this and nothing else, and you'd still get an A. But anyway, so this one here, you have to connect to my Splunk server, and I'm just going to open it in another browser for no terribly good reason. I guess I'll do it in this one. All right, so I hit this, opening a new tab, and pull that tab down. Okay, it has basic authentication, which didn't show up here. So let me see if I can get it, if I can show you that by opening another cloud in another browser. Let's try this one. There. This is what basic authentication looks like. Before you can connect, you have to put in a username and password. And it is just student 1 and student 1. All right. I think I didn't spell that right. All right. And once you're in, this server is now using the free version of Splunk. So you're already logged in as the administrator. That's how they punish you if you use the free version. Everybody is always the administrator. So you can follow up the server, and if you do, I have to restore it from backup. I've got a cloud-based backup for that. But anyway, now you can search data. So if you click search, you'll see the data here, and it's going to show you there's about 1 million log events on this server. These are log events that came from Splunk. They made them on a real network, and they sent in real attacks. They got all the data, they archived it, and they used it for a capture the flag competition that they ran at Splunk headquarters all around, and I did it. And after that was over, then they released the data publicly, so I could get it and other people could use it. And then they made a second and third version, and they released the second version, which I just got working today. So I have 2 of these, and these things are excellent. You're going to learn how to find real attacks. So let's do a little bit of this. So when you start, you have to use this index term. Splunk is like Google for log data. This is like the Google panel. You can search for words here, and it will find log events that have that. But you want to tell it to use index equal bots v1. That is the boss of the SOC data. My server has a few minutes of other data because when you first install Splunk Stream, it starts sniffing your local network and putting in entries. And I turned it off after a while. So there's 2 batches of data. There's data from several years ago, which is the Splunk data. And then there's a few minutes of data from recent, which is me sniffing the network. And this is the index term that will cause you to see only the official Splunk data. Now, if you search for that, you're going to find nothing because it only searches for the last 24 hours by default, and all that Splunk data is about 3 years old. So you have to set this to all time. And if you do, it's going to take a long time to find it because remember, there's about 1 million points. So when you're just trying to get an overview of all the data, if you don't want to wait for this to count up to 1 million, you can use event sampling, like 1 in 100. And now it will just look at 1% of the packets, 1% of the log, which is much faster. So now it takes only a few seconds to get up to 10,000 events. Now it's found 1% of the events. So now I can get an overview of the events. This is what events look like. Events are just log entries. There are many different devices. There are firewalls, intrusion detection systems, routers, system logs for Windows servers. All these logs are going into Splunk. And so this is an event. Here's another event showing some kind of Microsoft Windows sysmon. This is a Microsoft product that sniffs your local event logs and sends it up to a monitoring system. This is from something else. This is from FortiGate. So this is a FortiGate firewall. And so various devices are on the network sending up data. Here it looks like a Windows event saying an operation completed successfully, sysmon, and so on. Those are the events. If you want to see what your data looks like, you typically start here and you see what kind of data is available. For example, you can look at source type is what I usually like to look at. For some reason, I'm not seeing source type there, but I have source. The source shows you this is a Windows event log. This is stream data, which is looking at network traffic directly. This is SMB traffic, and here's IP, TCP, and HTTP traffic. Here's some kind of log from some kind of device. It looks like a Windows IIS log because CNIT pub is where Windows web servers put their files. This looks like an old IIS log. This is a suricata log, and so on. There's various kinds of logs out there. And so now you can answer questions. And so here's an example of source types. We talked about this. FortiGate traffic, Windows event logs, suricata, intrusion detection systems. All these systems are sending their data to Splunk, and Splunk is giving them so you can analyze them. So we might take a look at the HTTP stream. These will be web events. So here's some of them. And I'm only seeing 1% of them still, just to make it faster. So these are web requests. So this looks like it sent an accept to the server. Here's a web request. Here's like some web page coming back, not found. Looks like somebody attempted to view a page and they got a 404 error. So that's not too exciting. Let's look at the next one. Next one looks like another 404 error. So these are kind of repetitious. So rather than looking at them one by one, let's go over here and look at what types of events are out there. This thing, there it goes. So I have, for example, source IPs, event types. I got stream web and stream network traffic. That's not too exciting. If I go down here, I've got HTTP method, for example. So some of them are gets, some are posts, and then there's some connect and some options. Get is the most common web case, but a lot of these are posts. I've got HTTP packets in and so on. Anyway, let's go back to my instructions. Let's see what I want to look for here. I'd like to find, okay, I know the name of the server is imreallynotbatman.com. That was the website they set up. So I'd like to search for that. So what I've done so far is I put two things up here, index equal bots v1 to go to the right data set, and then I told it which source to look at, HTTP traffic. So it's showing me all the web traffic on the whole network. Now I'm gonna just put in imreallynotbatman.com. You can use this just like Google. Now here I have name equals value. So I have the name of a field and then the value. But you can just put a word here and it will just look for that word anywhere in the event. So things that have this phrase in it refer to that web server at all. So I'll search for that. And I had 9,000, I think, before, and now I'm down to just 200 because there are not that many that refer to this. These will be requests to my web server with that name that have replies that include that name, or most likely. And so now I see object moved, location, I'm really not Batman, Joomla, index. So apparently we're using Joomla, the content management system for this server. And here I see some interesting information. This shows, this is the Accunetrix web scanner. The attacker used this commercial product that scans for vulnerabilities called Accunetrix, and most commercial vuln scanners label the packets because they do not want criminals using them for crime. They are supposed to be used by licensed users for official penetration tests, so they are not designed to be sneaky. They're designed to make it very obvious what this traffic is, and they put the brand name of the product in every packet. So attackers that steal it would do well to modify and take that out, but your lamer, lower level attackers will just steal a pirate copy of it and run it and not realize that they're broadcasting your intent. So now I know something. I know that this source IP of this is an attacker's IP, and the destination IP of this is my web server. So now I know the web server's IP is the destination IP up here. That's the web server's IP, 192.168.250.70. And the attacker's IP is going to be the source IP, where they're running that scanner from. And that'll be someplace around here, source IP. So I now know some useful information. I know the name of the scanner. I know one of the attacker's servers, and I know my web server's IP address. So that's good, clean fun. Now you can start answering questions. So here you find attack servers. You can identify some threat actors, and I have steps on how to do it. And you can now analyze a ransomware attack. This thing got infected with ransomware, which then ran a script to encrypt the files, and you can see it happen. You can find out where it all started with a USB stick. And there's more. This looks like this did not load correctly, or maybe I'll take a look at this. I think this should look different. Anyway, I'll should see a whole lot of names for flags to turn in there. All right, I may have to look at this. This is screwy. All right. I will, I'm going to have to modify that page. But anyway, you can do the first couple of things here. The first couple flags are there, and somehow the other flags are not showing up. I'll have to track down the right. This is the wrong page. Okay, I'll have to fix that. I'll fix it after class, but you can start doing this. There'll be a scoring engine here. You can put it in. This one here somehow is messed up, but I'll get the right one up by later tonight. Anyway. So you should start doing some of those projects. I don't think I'll bother with any more demonstrations. I'll show you more of this one next time. Some people already did this one in the previous class, and if you did, just go on to the next one. The next one's a lot more fun. And the only person I know that did that was Kaz, and he's not here. He did it with us. We were on a team and we won. Most of the students haven't done this one yet because only the ones that actually went to Splunk did it. But now we can all do it. And this one is much bigger and more interesting, much harder. So do this one first and then that one. Although this one is not quite set up yet with the right labels on the flags, I've somehow linked to the wrong page, and I'll check that up after class. So are there any questions? You should have something to do. Yeah.
How do we turn stuff in if we're not on the Canvas infrastructure?
You have to create a Canvas account.
Well,
and
I have an account.
Yep. So then you should be able to join with this link right here.
Okay, so we actually have to.
Yeah, it's the same server I always use, which is not the City College server. And so you already have an account. You just need to join the course by clicking this link.
Okay.
And then you'll have an account, and then we can put in your scores. And if you email in homework and you've not yet made an account, my grader will eventually send you an email and say, you need to make a Canvas account so I can record your scores.
Do we need a credit card?
You need a credit card for making Google Cloud servers, which I highly recommend. You don't need it for Canvas. But yes, this project here, the first project where you make a Google Cloud server, you need a credit card for that. and I highly recommend it. You can do everything with virtual machines, but cloud machines are much better. Yeah.
Well, Google allows us to use a credit card to buy like a set amount on it.
With what?
Like a set amount, like you can.
Yeah, I wonder if someone wants to try that. If somebody without a credit card wants to get like a $10 prepaid card and try it, I would like to know if that works. I haven't tested it. I hope it works because there are some students with no credit card, and that's annoying. And I hope there's a simple way to get around that. It would be nice to find that out. If somebody would get like buy a $5 or $10 prepaid card and try it, if that worked, that would be awesome because you don't even have to spend the money. All you're going to do is use it as authentication for this free card. You can eventually, after you're done, you can go spend the $10. So that would be a good option. But I don't know if Google will fall for that. I did try the random credit card numbers that I made on websites. They won't take those. It's not that dumb. But anyway, but they're not actually charging any money. So, you know, there may be some workaround for people with no credit card. I tried them and it didn't work. But if you find one that works, that would be fine with me. I don't see how it does any harm. Google gives it away for free. I don't know why they run a credit card, but anyway. Yeah, I tried some websites and it didn't take them. But there might be a better website. Any other questions? Yeah, stolen one would probably work. I can't really recommend that, but it would probably work until it gets canceled. But I don't know if they even have a way to know it's canceled. Some people actually like take some money out or put some money in, but Google doesn't do that. So an old canceled card might work. Yeah.
They do not accept prepaid cards and virtual credit cards, VCCs, are not accepted for payment.
Okay. They say they won't take prepaid cards. Okay. But I don't know if that's true, of course.
Somebody can try.
Yeah, but if they say they won't, that probably, they're Google, they're pretty smart. That probably means there is some way to tell and they run it through some scrubber to remove them. So, you know. Well, I think there are patterns. I think there are numbers to tell you what kind of card it is. I think they're just sorted into categories. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, if you can't make a cloud server, then you can work on campus and make virtual machines, but that's really old-fashioned and I don't recommend it. Cloud servers are much more important. Any other questions?
Amazon's okay.
Oh, if you want to use Amazon, that's fine. It's just Amazon doesn't give you as much for free. In fact, it's probably better to use Amazon. I would use Amazon if they would give away enough free stuff easily. The only reason I use Google is because they're generous with the free stuff. Amazon is much more important. I would rather be teaching and using Amazon. So do that if you want to. That would be much better. And the third one, Azure would be fine too, if you like Azure. But Google is like number 2 or 3, and so they give you all this free stuff to get business. That's why I'm using them.
It depends on the person's preference, I guess.
Well, no, it just depends on what you're doing. Amazon is the most mature. They've been in it longest. They have the most complete offering. They have a lot of services. Azure is probably the second in terms of features. Azure has tried real hard to duplicate Amazon's features, and they have about half of them. Google has much less features. They're younger and smaller.
I took Professor Ali's class.
Yeah.
Spring. He said there's so many plugins that you can use for Azure.
Yes.
There's probably more since May. They probably added so many more.
Yes.
Since then that I don't know which ones though.
Yeah, I know Azure is really racing rapidly to catch up with Amazon. And Google, I think, is trying to catch up, but I think they're number 3.
Isn't Amazon has free?
Amazon has a limited free trial. You have 1 year and then it's gone, and you can't do it again with the same credit card. And if you have an educational partnership too, but they're very bureaucratic and it's hard to get in. So there's some free service available there, but it's harder to get. And if I used it, a large number of my students would be unable to get it, for example, by not officially being college students. The Google, everybody can get it. All they need is a credit card and a Gmail account. So it's more widely available. But Amazon is more important. If you want to do it on Amazon, that would be better.
Amazon also need a credit card.
I think they do. And they actually won't let you use it again. And they limit you to just 1 year, and after you've used it, it's gone. So, you know, they don't give away as much for free because I don't have to. They own the business. Google needs to get interest, so they give a lot of it for free. So for the moment, they're my choice, but not because of high quality, really kind of because of the opposite.
They're offer more free.
That's right. Because my students are scattered all over the world, and a lot of them are sort of broke, and they're not even citizens or anything. And so they need something that's really widely available.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Anyway.
I think Azure offers 200 $5 credit, same as Google. But I think in Azure, you have a limited time to use that credit.
Yeah, I did. I got an Azure account, and I got a powerful server and used it up in a week. If you turn on one of the bigger servers, it's all gone right away. By the way, the same thing's true with Google Cloud. If you max out a Windows machine, it'll burn through like $50 a day. Burn through your 300 really fast. Linux machines run only like $1 a day, so your $300 will last a long time. But Windows machines really hog up your money. Unless you make a small Windows machine that runs so slow it makes you cry.
When you extend the Google account, what needs to be changed?
I don't know. The only way to make it go further than trial is to pay money. What you do is make a new Gmail account. We make a new Gmail account with the same credit card, you get another $300.
So another Gmail account?
Yep. That's what I've done about 10 times. They don't seem to care. But of course, after a while, I really paid because I wanted the paid services. So that's what happens. Sooner or later, you'll see how great this is, and you'll want something you can't get for free. So it's serving its purpose. You know, they're letting you, after a while, they'll suck you in. Yeah, because it's so great. I now have about 15 cloud servers. I just made 2 more today. You know, once you find out how great they are, it turns out to be the answer to everything. I'll just make another server.
So the free server, Linux server, Google, so what's that system?
Oh, they have almost everything. They got every version of Ubuntu. They got Red Hat. They got all sorts of stuff. Oh, you can choose. The minimum system is like 1 gig of RAM and 10 gigs of SSD, and that's only like $1 a day, but you can go up to like 4 cores and 16 gigs of RAM and a big SSD, but then it just burns through your fake money faster. Yeah, and you can make clusters and everything, you know, all the goodies are there, although not like Amazon. Amazon has a ton of more stuff. Google has a smaller selection of features, but they have all the usual stuff. And they also have Google Cloud Storage, where I can put an image and you can make a machine with all the stuff pre-installed by copying my image. And that I had to pay for. So that's how they got me. But you know.
How much are they charging you for that monthly service?
It's not much. For like $5 a month, you get like 500 gigabytes of cloud storage or something. I use it for backup solution too. I mean, it's the cheapest solution of bulk storage in the cloud.
That's not bad, $5 a month?
It's not bad, yeah. That's why, you know, they're giving you a bunch of free, they're right. When you see how great it is and how cheap it is, you'll decide to pay for it before long. But if you really don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. You can totally do quite a bit on the free plan. Good, well, I'm going to stop the share, and then I'll stay on campus for a while. I'll go down to Science 37. Science 37 is available.